Well, my grandfather, Johnson, was a carpenter and a miller. You know, ground, custom ground flour and feed and corn meal. And they had mill in Halifax County, first one they had, down at Rawdon, Virginia, and they had sawmill down there and woodworking shop, because they built houses, and they also had contracts with Halifax and Pennsylvania County to build covered bridges. And it's none of their bridges standing. The last one that stood was named Clark's Bridge up here around Charco, and the flood in 1940 washed it away. I understand that the pillars for the bridge is still there, and I've been wanting to go see them, but I hope I get there one of these days. Just look at it. On my mama's side, they grew tobacco, and up on here on the mountain above Riceville, and all of her brothers were born and raised with tobacco, and they were real good hands with it. And of course, when we grew up here, I was born here in this house, and Daddy,
Tell them how old you are.
the mill, my daddy bought this mill down here that used to belong to the Millers. The Millers built the mill in 1830. And so Daddy bought the mill in this house. There wasn't nothing but a cabin here when they first come up here in 1917. And he didn't move up here until after he got married, and they moved up here in 1920. And Daddy installed flour milling machinery to rolls to make flour. And he, as he stayed here, these tracts of land, which we farmed, he started, they'd come up for sale, and he bought them, and he started farming here. He had folks to grow the tobacco, and they sharecropped it. And in a way, that's the way we got started in tobacco. Daddy built all the barns here except one. And the barn below the pack house is an original barn that was here when he bought the land. And I used the barn up until the last crop that I grew was in 1995. And I was 65 years old when I quit growing tobacco. But I always cured tobacco in the 4 stick barns we had left, and I also had a book barn. And I started, Daddy died all of a sudden in 1948 after I finished high school, and he was 56 years old and I was 17. So I stayed here, and I've been fooling with tobacco ever since. And even though for a long time I had other folks growing it, but I still helped in it. And then after our kids got big enough to work in tobacco, I started tending the tobacco on my own. I never did have over 8.5 acres of tobacco. That was as much as I could look after. But since I was still grinding feed at the mill and grinding flour, and I had cattle and I had hogs. The wood barn up here, that she'll show you the picture of it, is the last barn that Daddy built. In 1946, we lost 2 barns. One of them the lightning struck, and the other one, the wind got up and blew sparks from the fireboxes and set the barn afire. And so he built this log barn in 1947. And in a way, he put cement fireboxes in it, and brick, cement and brick. And then I bought cement caps to go on it. And the flues in it, I got pictures here of it, how they lay in the barn. In a way, I always tried to cure at least 1 or 2 barns of tobacco with wood. And that barn, it always cured good tobacco. And in a way, I didn't stay at the barn at night. I'd get up and go up and chunk spies up around 1 o'clock, and then go back again about 3 and wood the box up again. The other barns, we converted them to oil, put in oil burners, and they still in the barns right now. And, but I kept one wood barn, and I kept it on purpose. And I always liked to cure tobacco, and I'd go up there and read the paper, and on Sunday, Saturday evenings, and of course I could tend to it. And most all the tobacco, when I started fooling with it around here, was cured with wood. And then people got...
Tell them it had the flute pipes in it.
Well, I told them about that. And so this things were beginning to change, and we went to these book barns and made it was a lot easier and saved a lot of labor. And after you learn to cure with them, they really cured tobacco good, but no better than what we cured in the stick barn. It's just a lot less labor. That part of this house is probably built about the same time that the mill was built. That room in yonder is around, I'd say 1830, but it could have been built a little bit before that, because I think the Millers lived here in this house to start with, because they sawed the logs and it was put together with wooden pegs. It was a little bit fancier house than the average log house that was built. Here at the mill, they had, was the center of their farming operation. They had 2,200 acres of land that run from Bernier to Markham. And they had a sawmill down here at the mill, a foundry that they cast some of their things that they needed to farm with, a blacksmith shop, and I understand that they had a cotton gin here too, because back in them days they grew enough cotton that farm, they'd hand weave it, you know, as the time come on. Most farms back then was self-supporting.
I grew up on a farm west of Chatham, 5 miles west of Chatham, and we had tobacco, and at first we cut tobacco, but then we got to priming tobacco, which was, we thought we were really living it up when we got to being able to prime tobacco and string it on a stick. You cut
to cut the whole stalk
a
of the
stalk with 7 or 8 leaves on it,
Okay.
and you split it and hang it over the
stick.
over the stick.
Put-
And my job was to get the sticks and put them in the slot for them to hang it tobacco on.
Inside the barn? Was that inside?
No, that was outside.
Okay.
And then they would hang the tobacco in the barn.
Was this in Callan's area that you grew up? Was it around
It was Hollywood,
Hollywood.
a little community known as Hollywood, Flint Hill and Concord. We lived in the middle of all 3 of those communities.
What was your maiden name?
My maiden name was Knuckles.
I didn't know why they went to pulling tobacco, but I think what happened is that something they had they could separate the grades, and that's the way the companies wanted it. Cutting tobacco, they topped the tobacco about 12 or 14 leaves, and then they cut the whole stalk, and they'd put about 5 stalks on the tobacco stick, and that's the way they cured it. Well, when they started pulling tobacco, you put 3 leaves on the bone, and you had this cotton string, and you strung it on the stick with about 24 to 26 bunches on the stick. And I don't know exactly all that went on involved when they started pulling tobacco, but it started, they cut tobacco up to about 1934 or 5. Then in around 1936 they went to pulling it all. Then nobody cut it. Now if you grow dark tobacco and burley tobacco today, you would cut that and put it on the stick just like they used to all the time. Hand-strung tobacco that I cured in this wood barn with flues and cured it with wood.
Fireboxes
And
in the firebox.
this barn right here that's cured in was built in 1947.
What year was that picture taken?
It was took in about 1992 or 3 or somewhere along there. Okay. This is a picture of the 2 fireboxes that created the heat to cure the tobacco in that wood barn. And I've got that barn right there. I've probably had the heat on it around 150. I never did fire them hard like some people. They used to fire them up to 200 degrees, but I quit that. And I never would like for one of them to get over 170. And I just wood that box up, and you could go 2 or 3 hours, and then you got to come back and wood it up again. That's the difference between wood and oil. Now, oil, you could set thermostat, the carburetor on it, and when you got a certain heat, it will stay there until you changed it. You added more oil. Here's another stick of tobacco that on the stringing horse, and that shows the way you strung the tobacco at, and the ball of twine, and the bucket is water. That we always kept 2 or 3 buckets of water around these barns when you cured it with wood, because you never knew when you'd have to use it to put out the fire. These same ones. And of course I had me a cot up there, and I'd lay down, read the paper, and if I stayed up that night, and some people had a bed, and back when I first started chewing tobacco, but everybody had a different way of doing. Now this is the inside of the barn showing the flue pipe. This is a firebox and shows the cement caps on it, and these flues here is what put the heat out to cure the tobacco. And you can see the tobacco swinging from the tier poles, the bottom of it in this picture. All right, this picture right here shows the fireboxes and the flue pipe, and you can see a little bit more tobacco on the tier poles. Now these flue pipe, when they come from the fireboxes right here, they call that the driver. And you set that, you'd give it about a ½ inch above the level to make it draw. And when you went around with the pipe, you raised it a little bit more. But when you wound up, went outside of the barn, it probably went no more than an inch different, inch and a half. I don't know exactly how you done that, but they were basically, that's the way they done all of them. Now this picture right here is Imogene handed me tobacco, and we putting it in a ring, a plastic ring. When we first started selling tobacco loose, and we pack it in a ring, and she was handing me tobacco, and I was packing it in a ring and put it down.
That was cured in a buck barn.
Yeah, cured in a buck barn. This right here is a curing of the tips, we call it, and that's in a buck barn. And one of the last barns that I cured of my own. And Sadie Haley, she helped us in tobacco, and what's that boy's name? Pierce boy. You know.
I can't call it.
Anyway, he helped us. Now this was a curing before the last one. Had a lot of tips in it. And that was a good barn, really a good barn of tobacco. Well, the other one was a good barn of tobacco, sold all right. Here's Imogene standing at the barn. Now, this picture right here, we grew 319 tobacco. That was our variety. It was Coca's 319. Well, the salesman come out here and he took my picture in the tobacco field beside the 319 tobacco, and he put it on his brochure that he advertised 319 tobacco.
Seed brochure.
And now here's another picture. We had moved the cured tobacco to what we call the pack house, where we packed it down from stick barn, and we had the sign he give us, my brother and I, and with 319 on it, and that was our help that helped us here move that tobacco. Anyway, this went on into one of their advertising brochures too. I remember when they built it, we call it here, every farm has a name for the buildings and the barns, and we call this one the second Alabama barn. And they built that barn in 1936, and they had, back out then when they got ready to build a barn, they would, they built them out of logs, and they always called it a barn raising. And everybody in the community would help raise that barn. And of course, Mom and them fixed dinner for them. and that was a big thing. They had a barn raising, and then they'd come to the house and eat, and there'd be 15, 20 people. Sometimes they'd have set, I believe Mom and them had 2 tables, you know, 2 different tables, cause all of them couldn't eat at the same time. And
We eat on the front porch a whole lot.
anyway,
When we had a lot of company, we'd set up a table right on the front porch.
the wood barn that I showed these pictures here was built in 1947, and I remember building this barn better than I did the one in 36, because in 1936 I was over 6 years old. I remember building the barn, but that's all. I do know one thing. In 1955 in March, we had a tornado and a windstorm, and it blew the top off of that barn and set it right on the back side of it. The logs, everything was attached, and we just went there and took the top off of it, and of course we had to put it back up there and then build a new top with the rafters on. But it just picked it up and blew it right over on the ground. But I remember building I helped build the wood barn that I'm showing these pictures. See, we had to go in and take pieces of split wood and chink it. That's what we call chinking it. Stop up the cracks, and then you would daub it with mud, and that kept it airproof. You know, airproof. This barn, we built it with mortar and dirt mixed and put in there, and that barn is still got the same mortar in it. Basically, was put in it when it was built, and that's saying a whole lot. Tobacco is getting blamed for a whole lot of problems that tobacco didn't cause. The problems that tobacco's got is the people that grew it and they made the chemicals and stuff to go on it. And that's where our downfall has been, because we used some chemicals back in the 50s to kill worms with, and flea bugs and whatnot, that ought not never been used. The chemicals they're using now is safe chemicals. And anyway, I'm glad they quit using some of the chemicals that they used to use. And they found out how it would happen, and I think that's the reason we got the all this problem with it. Because my great-grandmother lived to be 102 years old, and they go and find that picture. Anyway, when they took the South Boston paper, went there and interviewed her when she was 100 years old. All right. And she had been smoking a corncob pipe all her life and raised 10 kids.